Okay, so for this project, for my Linux class, I had to create user accounts from this data file of user information. You can see they have the username, then this is the employee ID, phone number, address, birth date, then this is the department which they're in, which will later be used as the group membership that they want, and then their salary. The first thing we had to do was get this in a format that we could read from the script. So what I did is I saved it as a file, save it as a different name here so I can walk you through it. Save it as a comma separated file. What you can do if you click this edit filter settings, keep current format, you can select the field delimiter, which we want to be colon, and then we can leave the text delimiter like that. So anyway, if we go ahead and save that, I won't save it right now, but I'll just show you. Go ahead and save that. If we vim the employee data, you'll see how it comes out as a colon delimited field here with all those different things, and then that's how we are able to make that work a little bit nicer in our script. So now within this script, I just wrote it in bash. So obviously the first line is you specify the shell that you're using. Here I'm using the bash shell. Alright, so first off we're going to start file in employee data. That just saves the employee data file as this variable file in. So it's very easy for me to come in here and say, oh, I need to change this to, another file for it to run. So if I do that, it's very easy for me. Then I don't have to go through and change the file name throughout the text because I use it multiple times. Okay, this next part here, this IFS, this is basically saying the input field separator. So for all your for loops and everything, it uses a field separator to separate out array fields, and here you can specify what that field separator is. The default is a space, so every time it hits space, it would go to the next field in a sense. So as you can see here, there's spaces between all those names, so each space was being referenced as a different field in all my for loops and creating arrays and all that stuff, which I can show you a little bit later. So anyway, that's just the new line. So the IFS is now the new line character, so every time there's a new line, that's when the line comes in. So now this is just a check to see if the file exists. If, not the file exists, the -f is for the file to exist. The file in variable, which is whatever we name the file. So if that file does not exist, that's what this is saying, then just say it cannot find the file. Otherwise, if it does exist, then we're going to run our script, obviously. So the first part that I did is a couple different arrays here. You can see I created an array of groups from the group file here on column F. The second one was for their full names, so you have their entire full name. The user ID, which was the second column right there, and then the usernames, which I'll explain in a second. So here we go. So groups, this first part, the parentheses here mean to save whatever this is into an array. So that basically says now groups is going to be an array. These backticks basically specify a command, so the output of this command, whatever this command is, the output of that is going to be saved in this groups variable as an array because of the parentheses there. Okay, so I'll just walk you through it. So cut, use the cut command to do that. The delimiter we specify is going to be the colon. We specify field 6 because if we look here for the group, so if we take this bottom one here, so first name is group 1, employee ID is field 2, field 1, field 2, field 3, address is field 4, date of birth is field 5, and then the group is field 6, so accounts, computers, marketing, etc., etc. And then group 7 would be their salary, or field 7 would be their salary. So we're cutting the 6th field, cut with the delimiter of the colon. The field is specified is going to be 6. We're going to do that to the file saved within the file in variable, and then what we're going to do is we're going to pipe that output, whatever that would output, because normally cut just outputs to the screen. So instead we're telling it to pipe it into the input of sed. We have to pipe it into sed, and this is going to substitute any spaces, and it's just basically going to remove them. And what that does is in Linux, you can't have group names that contain spaces. So what was happening was it would get to human resources. It wouldn't even create a group called human resources because that's an invalid group name. You cannot have spaces in groups in Linux. So that sed command, it's searching for any spaces, and if there is, it's removing it. So whatever the output of this command is going to be saved as the groups as an array. Okay, the full names are doing the same thing. We're cutting : the first field from the file in, so that's just going to give us an array of the full names, their first and last name. User ID is the second field of the file in, and then the usernames. This one was kind of fun. So basically, we're going to take their first names, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a username from the first letter of their first name and their last name. So John Doe would have a username of J Doe. So usernames equals, so the output of this command is going to go into this array, username array. So we do cut, the delimiter obviously is the : again. Field 1, we're taking their first name, just like we did for the full names here. But then rather than just save that directly to the array, we're going to pipe the output of that into this translate function, which basically says take anything that's a capital letter and make it a lowercase letter. So that's what that command does. And then the output of that, we're going to pipe into awk. So when we pipe it into awk, we now have, awk is looking at this as two fields separated by a space, because you have your first name, space, and then their last name. So the field 1, this $1 in awk, is the first name, and $2 is their last name. So if we just did a print, forgot about this part. If we just did print $1, ignore that, and $2, we would get their first name and last name. Okay? But this substring means take the substring of field 1, start at the first character, and only make it one character long. So what this is going to do is it's going to get the first letter of the first name, and then add the last name. And then the other thing to notice is if I put a comma in here, it's going to put a space in between those two letters. So without the comma, then it'll join those two together as one, and we can use that as a username. Okay, so now we have our arrays here. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to create the groups from the groups array. Okay, so this is just a variable for every group. In the array groups, that's all of them. This is how you specify an array. We're going to search this file to see if that group exists. That variable is going to be accounts, this account's name. It's going to search for accounts. This is where the groups are stored. And then so how grep works, so grep and -q is a quiet, it doesn't produce any output, but it will still return an exit status, which is the $? So x equals $? We let x equal the exit status of that. If the exit status is 1, the command failed and it could not find this group, which means the group doesn't exist. So if the command failed with an exit status of 1, so if x equals 1, right, then you're going to create the group add the group, okay? And we're going to go through and we're going to do that for all the different groups. I would ask if there's any questions at this moment, but obviously I cannot answer them very well. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create user accounts and then add them to the groups, set their password. Once the account is created, we're going to mail each account. So this is just initializing some variables here. X equals 0, created equals 0. Okay, so for basically every object in this array, usernames, we're going to go through, we're going to add. Now, if there already is a username of that name, Linux won't create it. It'll error out and say, hey, that username already exists. So user add, this -n, so basically whenever you add a user in Linux, the default is it creates a group of that same name. If I were to add a user Mark, it would create a group called Mark by default. So this n basically keeps it from creating that group. And then this -c says we're going to, in the comment, we're going to put their full name. So this is basically taking whatever, x is 0 at the moment, first time through, so the array at 0.0, because arrays start at element 0. So full names at element 0, which is up here in this, so that's going to be the comment for that user. The group we're going to specify is the groups in element 0, which, we created the groups up here, so it should all match. And then the username is going to be whatever user we are on in that array. So this first one is Popeye Sailor. It's not going to create a group called Popeye Sailor. The C for the comment is full name, so it's going to be Popeye Sailor. G for groups, the group is going to be the accounts group, which is right up here, which we specified. And then the username for Popeye Sailor is going to be psailor. All right. The account has already been created. It will say, hey, there's a user account that already exists. So we're going to, okay, any standard error, if it errors out, just pipe it into this dev null, which basically suppresses any output. We run that. Here's that $? Again, which is the exit status of the most recently run command. So we just ran this command. So if the exit status of that equals 0, which means it was successful, then what we're going to do is we're going to create this counter group. So created equals created plus 1. So obviously it's created 0, plus 1 is created. So it's going to keep track of how many accounts were created. Okay, so that ends that. Now we're still in this for loop here, so we're still on the Popeye Sailor. So now this creates the password. This next part creates the password for the user and suppresses the output. Okay. In this user add, there is a -p option, but that for some reason doesn't set it properly. It doesn't work. I'm not really sure why. Every time we tried it in all the research I did, it would always say bad password. So what I found is this is the way to set the password. So what you do is the assignment was take the password, their user ID, the number, this second column here, which is what we got up right there, that will be their password, it's their employee ID or whatever. So take that, we're still at x equals 0, so the user ID at element 0, which is the very first one. We're going to echo that, and then we're going to pipe it in to this passwd command. We're telling it to get the input from standard input, okay? So this is basically piping it into what would be standard input for this command. So that's what the piped command does. So this user is getting this password through this command. Alright, and then what we're doing is we're suppressing the output of that, because otherwise it'll say, oh, the password has been set to this, and we don't want to display anything, so we're passing it into this dev null. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to send the user an email, okay? So this echo command is basically creating the body of the email. Alright, so that's the body of the email. Your username is whatever the username is, because it will, since we use double quotes, it will expand this out to whatever the value of this $user is. Just real quick here, this backslash is an escape character, so it will actually display these quotation marks as is. It won't think of it as the end of this string. So that's what the backslashes are there for. Alright, so that's going to be the body of the mail. We echo that. Normally echo goes obviously right to the screen, but what we're going to do is we're going to pipe the output of it into the input for this mail command. So mail, subject, new account for username, and then this -b is blind carbon copy. We're going to send that to the root user. And then this is the username that we send the actual mail to. Okay, so that sends the mail to Popeye Sailor. That's one iteration of the loop. Do x equals x plus 1. So now x is 1. We echo some dots so it just looks nice as a progress bar going across the screen. Flip it up there and it goes through again, runs through for all the users. And then at the end it's going to echo out complete, and then it's going to say how many user accounts have been created. So that's how it is. I will run this for you shortly. Close without saving. And we're going to go sh and we're going to run that. So now it's going through. See, there's our progress bar in a sense. It's echoing all those dots for us as it creates it. So it's going through, it's creating all those usernames. 24 accounts have been created. Let's just go in and double check just to make sure. Yep, there's all of our accounts. There's our psailor person. He's in the accounts group. Full name is Popeye Sailor, so it worked out perfect. Password should be set. So now we have all of our users in a group, and that is our script. Thanks for watching.